Two leagues have said no to Brendan Sorsby. What happens now? A quarterback who put up over 7,000 yards and 60 touchdowns in college can't find a professional league willing to sign him. Not the NFL, not the CFL. And as things stand right now, it's hard to see where Brendan Sorsby goes from here. That's the central question hanging over one of the more complicated stories in football right now. Not just what Sorsby did, but what it means for his future and what it reveals about how professional leagues handle situations where elite talent collides with serious integrity concerns. Let's get into it. Brendan Sorsby was, by any statistical measure, one of the most productive college quarterbacks in recent memory. His numbers at Texas Tech weren't just good. They were the kind of numbers that get scouts paying close attention, that get analysts talking about NFL upside, that make a player genuinely believe a professional career is within reach. And for a while, it seemed like it might be. Then the gambling investigation changed everything. According to reports, Sorsby wagered more than $90,000 across thousands of bets throughout his college career. The most damaging element wasn't just the scale of the betting, it was the nature of it. At least 40 of those bets, according to reports, were placed on Indiana Hoosiers games while Sorsby was still on the team's roster. That's not a grey area. Betting on your own team's games as an active player is one of the clearest integrity violations in all of sports. The NCAA ruled him ineligible, and Sorsby's path forward narrowed considerably from that point on. He gave up his remaining eligibility at Texas Tech. He dropped his case against the NCAA. And when the time came for the 2026 NFL draft, Sorsby wasn't among the names called, in part because the NFL elected not to hold a supplemental draft that would have given him a legitimate entry point into the league. That was one door closed. Then came another. The CFL, in a statement to USA Today, made its position clear. The league announced it would not register a contract for Sorsby and that no team would be permitted to add him to its negotiation list. The league statement, according to USA Today, cited the seriousness of the allegations and the importance of upholding competitive integrity. The CFL's 2026 season had already kicked off earlier this month, so the window was already tight to begin with. But even the possibility of a mid-season entry through an open tryout appears to have been taken off the table. And here's what makes this particularly striking. According to USA Today, Sorsby didn't appear on the negotiation list of any CFL team. No team quietly added his name, hoping to develop him later. No organization was testing the waters. The league's stance was essentially unanimous before the formal announcement even came. So what does that tell us? It tells us that professional leagues, regardless of how talented a player is, are deeply protective of their gambling integrity policies. That's not a surprise. The NFL has suspended players for gambling violations with less evidence than what Sorsby's case involves. The integrity of the outcome of every single game is the foundational product that every league sells. Without it, everything else falls apart. So when a player's situation involves betting on games he was participating in, the threshold for forgiveness, or even for cautious tolerance, drops dramatically. That's the institutional reality Sorsby is navigating, and the numbers don't help him argue his case, even though they might otherwise work in his favor. $90,000 in bets, thousands of individual wagers, 40 bets specifically placed on Hoosiers games while he was a Hoosier. Each of those data points makes the next conversation harder. Now, Sorsby's legal team isn't walking away. His attorney, Jeffrey Kessler, a prominent sports lawyer, told ESPN that the NFL's decision to not hold a supplemental draft constitutes a violation of the CBA and the law. Kessler's team is reportedly planning to take the matter to the NFL Players Association. That's a significant legal route, and Kessler is not someone the league will dismiss casually. But even if that avenue produces movement, it's worth considering what the realistic outcome looks like. A legal challenge might force a conversation about process. It almost certainly doesn't guarantee Sorsby a roster spot or a league willing to simply set aside what happened. The CFL situation reinforces that point. The CFL isn't bound by the NFL CBA. They made their own independent assessment and arrived at the same conclusion. That's not a coincidence. That's two separate professional football organizations looking at the same set of facts and deciding the reputational and integrity risk isn't worth absorbing. Which brings us to what Sorsby's actual options look like at this point. The UFL has been floated as a possibility. It's a developmental league with less scrutiny than the NFL or CFL, and some have suggested it might be more willing to take a chance. But given that both major professional leagues have now formally declined to associate with him, it's a reasonable question whether any organized league wants to be the one that took on a player two others rejected over a gambling scandal. The optics are complicated, and leagues are aware of them. The most grounded, realistic path, based on what's been reported, may be junior college football. Sorsby has already relinquished his college eligibility at the Division 1 level, but junior college represents a potential avenue to stay on the field, continue developing, and perhaps most importantly, demonstrate publicly that he is addressing the underlying issues that created the situation in the first place. Because here's the thing that matters most going forward. At this point, the burden of proof is entirely on Brendan Sorsby, not on the NFL, not on the CFL, not on the legal system. The leagues have spoken. If there's a path back into professional football, it almost certainly runs through a sustained period of accountability, transparency, and rehabilitation. Not just as a phrase, but as a demonstrable, documented reality. A gambling addiction is a serious condition. Acknowledging it publicly and seeking treatment isn't a weakness. It could, in time, become part of the argument for why a league might eventually reconsider. The comparison isn't perfect, but other athletes have come back from significant violations by doing exactly that, stepping back, doing the work, and re-entering the conversation from a position of demonstrated change rather than continued legal maneuvering. Whether Sorsby pursues that kind of path or continues fighting primarily through legal channels will shape the next chapter of this story considerably. What we know right now is that a quarterback with legitimate NFL caliber production is looking at a 2026 without a professional football home. That's a striking outcome for someone whose college tape still generates real conversation. And it raises a broader question about how leagues balance talent evaluation against integrity standards. A question that doesn't have a clean answer, but one that every front office in professional sports is thinking about carefully. Sorsby is 23 years old. The window isn't permanently closed, but it has never been smaller than it is right now. And whether it opens again depends almost entirely on what he chooses to do next. Here's a question worth discussing. If Brendan Sorsby spends the next year addressing his gambling issues, stays visible through junior college football, and comes back in 2027 with a clear record, should the NFL give him a legitimate path back in? Where do you draw the line between accountability and a second chance?